What's up everyone, welcome back to my channel. Look, park rangers see things in the wilderness that the rest of us never encounter. They spend weeks alone in backcountry stations, patrol trails where nobody goes, respond to search and rescue calls in the middle of the night. And the people in these stories weren't rookies fresh out of training. We're talking about rangers with 10, 15, 20 years experience. People who know their territory better than anyone, who have spent thousands of nights in the forest, who can track anything that moves and know the difference between normal wilderness sounds and something wrong. What I'm about to share are 3 encounters that went beyond missing hikers or bear sightings. A backcountry ranger in Washington who discovered something was systematically destroying his remote trail cameras. A search and rescue coordinator in Montana who responded to a missing person report and found evidence of something hunting in the national forest. And a wilderness ranger in Colorado who spent a week alone at a fire lookout tower and learned why the previous ranger quit without explanation. Some details have been changed because these are still active patrol areas, but what happened in those forests, that's real. Here's the thing about being a park ranger. You're responsible for vast territory, hundreds of square miles of wilderness where you might be the only human for days. You know the land, you know the wildlife, you know what belongs there. So when something appears that breaks every pattern you've learned over decades, when something operates with intelligence that wildlife doesn't have, you can't explain it away. Because the forest is your job, your expertise, and something is there that shouldn't exist. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We tell real stories from people who lived through them. And after you hear what these rangers encountered in forests they thought they knew everything about, you'll understand why some wilderness areas have unofficial warnings that never make it into the visitor guides. This happened in September 2021. I'm Derek Patterson. I was 42 at the time, been a backcountry ranger in North Cascades National Park for 18 years. I managed over 200 square miles of wilderness that most people will never see. My job was wildlife monitoring, trail maintenance, occasional search and rescue, but mostly I was alone studying animal populations. I ran a network of 25 trail cameras documenting everything that moved through the backcountry. Bears, cougars, wolves, elk, even the occasional wolverine. Every 6 weeks I'd do a 3-day circuit checking cameras, downloading footage, replacing batteries. 18 years probably checked those cameras 150 times. Always found exactly what I expected, wildlife going about their business, occasionally a lost hiker, nothing unusual. The wilderness was predictable when you understood it. Animal behavior follows patterns, everything has an explanation. I had a degree in wildlife biology, extensive tracking training, knew every game trail and water source in my territory. I was comfortable spending weeks alone in the backcountry, preferred the solitude actually. September 2021, I headed out for what should have been another routine camera check through territory I knew better than anywhere on Earth. First camera location was an alpine meadow near a permanent water source. I got there around 10 a.m. and immediately saw something was wrong. The camera was destroyed. Not weather damage, not animal damage, this was deliberate. The camera had been ripped from the tree and the metal security cable was snapped. These cables are rated for over 500 pounds of force. The housing was smashed open, SD card was removed, and the circuitry was pulled out systematically. The cables showed marks like it had been torn by hand, not cut with tools. And the camera was mounted 8 feet up the tree, would have required climbing or serious height to reach. I checked the last footage before destruction, nothing unusual for 6 weeks of normal wildlife activity. Then the final images showed darkness and an extreme close-up of something examining the camera. The last photo looked like a hand, but the proportions were wrong and it seemed to have too many fingers. The image was corrupted and pixelated, but it definitely showed deliberate examination. Timestamp was 3:47 a.m. 3 nights earlier, middle of a moonless night. The ground around the tree showed disturbance, but no clear tracks. Second camera location, same thing, destroyed identically. Third camera destroyed, fourth camera destroyed, all ripped down, cables snapped, SD cards removed, circuitry pulled out. All at similar timestamps between 3 and 4 a.m. over consecutive nights. Something was methodically finding and destroying every camera in my network, moving in a deliberate pattern, 1 camera per night, systematic search. 5th and 6th cameras were the same. I'd hidden these cameras carefully, some in locations known only to me. They were camouflaged, positioned to be unobtrusive, secured against theft. Whatever was destroying them had to be searching specifically for cameras. This wasn't random bear or cougar behavior. This required understanding what cameras were. The intelligence required to know cameras exist, recognize them, and destroy them systematically was deeply unsettling. I tried radioing headquarters from a high ridge. Heavy static, couldn't establish connection. Radio had worked fine on the hike in, suddenly degraded in this area. My satellite messenger showed sending, but messages never delivered. GPS still worked, but my compass was spinning, showing magnetic interference. Temperature dropped suddenly, an unusual cold front moving through, and the wildlife sounds were completely absent. No birds, no insects. The forest was silent in a way that felt wrong. I had 19 more cameras to check, spread over 2 more days of hiking. Professional obligation said I needed to document what was happening, gather evidence. So I continued the circuit and set up my tent early at the 7th camera location to observe through the night. Maybe I could catch whatever was destroying cameras in the act. Camera 7 was in a small clearing. I positioned myself 50 yards away upwind. I settled in at dusk, watching the camera location through binoculars, waded through sunset twilight darkness using my night vision monocular. Around 11 p.m. I heard something large moving through the forest toward the camera. It wasn't moving like any known animal. This was deliberate, careful, checking its surroundings. I could hear branches being tested, foliage being moved aside, an intelligent search pattern. A shape emerged into the clearing, upright, bipedal, over 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair. It walked directly to the camera like it knew exactly where it was. It examined the camera, looked at it from multiple angles, then ripped it from the tree effortlessly. Then it turned and looked directly toward my hiding spot 50 yards away. It made eye contact with me across the darkness. We held that gaze for 30 seconds. Then it casually destroyed the camera, dropped the pieces, and walked away into the forest. I realized it had known I was there the entire time. It destroyed the camera anyway, right in front of me, to make a point. I stayed in my tent until dawn, too terrified to move. At first light, I examined the camera location. Same destruction pattern, but the ground around the site showed clear prints now. Bipedal, 18 inches long, 5-toed. The prints showed dermal ridges like fingerprints, but the pattern was wrong, not human. Stride length suggested over 7 feet tall, weight probably 400 pounds or more. A trail of prints led away into dense forest toward my remaining cameras. I remembered stories from veteran rangers when I first started 18 years ago. Warnings about certain areas, unofficial boundaries, places to avoid. They'd mentioned camera-shy areas where monitoring equipment always failed or disappeared. Previous rangers had blamed equipment failure, theft, bear damage, but the pattern matched. Systematic destruction, SD cards removed, always at night. One ranger had quit suddenly 15 years ago after a solo patrol, never explained why. I had 18 cameras remaining on my circuit. I realized I'd been documenting something's territory without knowing it. The cameras had been capturing images for months before destruction. That's why the SD cards were taken. Evidence removal, counter-surveillance. Whatever destroyed the cameras understood they were monitoring devices. It had been studying my pattern, learning my schedule, waiting. I decided to abandon the remaining cameras and hike out immediately. The shortest route back to my ranger station was 25 miles through wilderness, but the route passed through areas where destroyed cameras were concentrated. The alternative was 40 miles, adding a full extra day. I chose the shorter route, get out fast, report to headquarters, return with a team. As I hiked, I found evidence everywhere once I knew to look for it. Trees with bark stripped 8 to 10 feet up, territorial marking maybe. Structures made of stacked rocks and woven branches, arrangements too deliberate to be natural. Game trails showed fresh prints, same bipedal pattern, multiple individuals. I wasn't dealing with one entity, there were several in this territory. They'd been there all along, I just never recognized the signs. I passed destroyed camera 8. The pieces were arranged in the clearing, formed into a pattern like an arrow pointing toward my planned route. They knew which way I was going, were directing or warning me. I altered course, bushwhacking off-trail to avoid the predicted path. Within an hour, I found another destroyed camera's remains, same arrow arrangement. They were herding me, controlling my route through the wilderness. I reached a high ridge at sunset, could see miles of forest in all directions. Used my binoculars to scan terrain and saw smoke from my own ranger station 15 miles away. But I also saw movement in the forest below, multiple large shapes moving through trees in a coordinated pattern, spreading out systematic search. They were looking for me, knew I was trying to leave, wanted to intercept. I counted at least 8 to 10 separate individuals, all moving with purpose. I made camp on the exposed ridge, safest position I could see approaches. I built a fire larger than necessary, light and warmth, but also a deterrent. Around 9 p.m. I heard vocalizations echoing through valleys below, deep whooping calls being answered from multiple directions. The calls were coordinating, directing, organizing a search pattern. They were communicating about me, using sound to triangulate my position. At midnight, the sounds grew closer, surrounding the ridge from 3 sides. I could hear branches breaking, rocks being displaced, deliberate noise. They were letting me know they were there, psychological pressure. I saw shapes at the edge of firelight, tall and massive, multiple individuals. They didn't enter the light, just watched from darkness, studying me. One vocalized a loud, aggressive roar, testing my reaction. I fired my rifle into the air as a warning. The vocalization stopped immediately. Shapes retreated from the firelight, but I could hear them moving around the perimeter. They didn't leave, just backed off. At dawn, I found evidence they'd been 20 feet from my camp all night. Prints surrounded my position. Multiple individuals could have attacked any time. They'd chosen not to, just maintained presence, sent a message. On the ground near my tent were arranged broken camera pieces, specifically from the camera I'd watched being destroyed that first night. The SD card was placed on top of the pile, intact, deliberately left for me. The message was clear. We know you, we know what you're doing, we're allowing you to leave. I needed to descend the ridge and cross 5 miles of dense forest to reach my station. The valley below was their territory, multiple individuals confirmed. I waited until full daylight, hoping they'd be less active. At 8 a.m. I started descent, moving fast, rifle ready. Within the first mile, I found a massive tree blocking the trail. Fresh fall, 3 feet in diameter, would take hours to cut through. There'd been no storm last night, no wind. The tree was pushed over deliberately to block my route. I had to detour around the blocked trail, adding miles through difficult off-trail terrain, steep slopes, dense undergrowth, slow progress. I kept seeing movement in peripheral vision, shapes pacing me through the forest. They were tracking me, maintaining distance but not letting me escape surveillance. I heard branches breaking deliberately, letting me know they were there. I increased my pace to nearly a run. The shapes kept pace effortlessly, moving through dense forest faster than I could. They were herding me again, keeping me on a specific route. When I tried to change direction, I immediately heard aggressive vocalizations. The warning was clear: stay on their chosen path or face confrontation. I came to a creek crossing waist-deep water with fast current. I waded in and used the water to break tracking, followed the creek downstream half a mile. The terrain was exhausting but necessary. I climbed out on the far bank and checked behind me. No visible pursuit. Had I lost them, or were they allowing me to think I'd escaped? I was now 2 miles from my ranger station, almost to safety, but I'd traveled through the densest part of forest, the slowest terrain. I realized their herding made sense. They'd given me an easy route through their territory. When I deviated, they corrected me but didn't attack. They were escorting me out, ensuring I left but controlling how I left. A test of whether I'd comply or challenge their authority over the territory. Last mile to the station, I moved as fast as possible. Saw my cabin through the trees, safety, radio, potentially other rangers present. 100 yards from the cabin, I heard a massive vocalization behind me. I turned and saw a shape standing on the trail 50 yards back, over 8 feet tall, watching. It made no move to approach, just stood there as I reached the cabin. I got inside, locked the door, looked out. The shape was gone, but the message was received. They'd allowed me to reach safety. I radioed headquarters and reported the destroyed cameras and encounters. My supervisor asked if I actually saw what destroyed the cameras. I described bipedal, 7 to 8 feet tall, coordinated group behavior. He went silent, then said, "Pack your gear, helicopter extraction in 2 hours." Unusually quick response, no questions, just immediate extraction. The Park Service sent a team to recover remaining cameras a week later. All 18 remaining cameras had been destroyed in identical manner within days of my escape. SD cards all removed, circuitry pulled out, systematic destruction. The team found extensive evidence: prints, tree markings, structures, territorial signs. The area was quietly reclassified as wildlife-sensitive zone with limited access. Official explanation was grizzly bear activity, protect denning sites. The real reason was too many encounters, too much evidence. The area was controlled by something else. I was reassigned to front country ranger work, visitor center duties, no backcountry patrols. Officially, it was position restructuring. Unofficially, I knew too much, saw too much. I took medical leave for PTSD, couldn't sleep without checking windows. Eventually, I transferred to a different national park in a different state. The career I'd loved for 18 years was effectively over. I researched after the incident and found over 40 years of similar encounters in the North Cascades. Rangers reporting camera failures, equipment destruction, encounters with unknown wildlife. Several rangers had quit suddenly, refused to discuss reasons. Native American tribal records showed that specific area was forbidden territory. Traditional knowledge said beings lived there, protected the deep forest. Modern rangers had ignored warnings, placed cameras anyway, violated boundaries. I spoke with retired rangers who'd worked the Cascades in the 1970s and 80s. They confirmed certain areas where cameras didn't work, equipment disappeared. They'd learn. Which valleys to avoid, which ridges to stay off. You could patrol 95% of the park safely, but that 5% wasn't ours to patrol. Things lived there long before the park was established, will be there long after. The unofficial ranger code was respect the boundaries, don't push into certain territories. My 25 cameras were never replaced in that area. The Park Service monitors that wilderness differently now, aerial surveys only, no ground cameras. The area remains open to public but with restricted access and permit requirements. Rangers patrol the periphery but avoid deep penetration. My experience is classified as equipment failure due to bear activity, but new rangers are briefed unofficially about areas to avoid, rules that aren't written down. 2 years after the incident, I received a package at my new posting. No return address, postmarked from a town near the North Cascades. Inside was the SD card from camera 1, the first destroyed. The last video file showed me checking that camera during my previous circuit. I was being watched, filmed by my own equipment, studied before the destruction began. The card also had new footage, timestamped from the week after my extraction. It showed 6 individuals approaching the camera at night, examining it. The final frame showed one looking directly at the camera, eyes reflecting infrared. The face was vaguely human but wrong proportions, massive jaw, heavy brow. A caption had been added digitally to the image, "Stay out." Someone or something had learned to use the cameras, had learned to add messages. They wanted me to know they were still there, still watching, and next time I entered their territory, they might not let me leave. I destroyed the SD card and never told anyone about it, but I know that 200 square miles of North Cascades wilderness is officially managed by the Park Service with ranger patrols and visitor access. The reality is it's controlled by something else, something that's been there for centuries. Something that tolerates human presence at the edges but deep in the wilderness, in the old-growth forests, humans are only allowed by permission, and that permission can be revoked. This one happened in July 2022. I'm Sarah Klein. I was 38 then, search and rescue coordinator for Glacier National Park for 14 years. I'd led over 200 operations finding lost hikers, injured climbers, overdue backpackers. Most searches ended successfully within 48 hours. This one started routine, experienced hiker, good equipment, documented route plan, just overdue on return. We initiated search day 4 after family reported him missing. I assembled my team, coordinated with county sheriff, set up base camp at Trailhead. Everything was by the book, standard procedures, systematic grid search. The hiker's name was Michael Torres, 41, from Denver, avid backpacker with hundreds of trail miles logged, not the type to panic or get disoriented. His route was challenging but well within his capability. Weather had been perfect, no environmental factors to explain disappearance. We expected to find him with a sprained ankle or delayed by scenery, maybe a dead phone battery. Just another search, find him day 1 or 2, everyone goes home safe. I had no idea we'd find evidence that Michael hadn't just gotten lost. Something had hunted him through 15 miles of wilderness with intelligence and patience that no known predator possesses. Search teams deployed to Michael's planned route, working outward from last known position. Day 1 of search, we found his first campsite from 3 nights ago. The camp was normal, tent had been set up properly, fire ring used, food stored correctly, but something felt wrong about the site. The equipment placement was too careful, too deliberate, like Michael had organized everything perfectly before leaving camp, or like someone else had organized it after he left. Our K9 unit picked up Michael's scent trail heading north from camp. The trail was easy to follow initially, clear boot prints, disturbed vegetation. Then the prints showed Michael had started running, full sprint through difficult terrain. There was no obvious reason. Trail was flat, weather was good, no signs of animal encounter. The running continued for over a mile through dense forest, dangerous terrain for running at that speed. Michael was experienced, wouldn't run like this without serious reason. The trail showed Michael had stopped running and crouched behind a boulder. He'd waited there for an estimated 30 minutes based on scent concentration and disturbed ground. Then he moved again carefully, trying to be quiet, staying to cover. The pattern repeated: run, hide, wait, move carefully, run again. Michael was evading something, using tactics that suggested intelligence in whatever was pursuing him. This wasn't running from a startled bear or aggressive moose. This was calculated escape behavior. We found his second camp from night 2. Michael had barely stopped, minimal setup. The tent was erected, but the sleeping bag was unused, food uneaten, everything packed and ready to run. The fire hadn't been lit despite cold night temperatures. Michael had prioritized stealth over comfort or safety. Most disturbing were the large prints around the perimeter of camp. Barefoot, humanoid, 17 to 18 inches long, circling Michael's camp repeatedly. The prints weren't bare, wrong structure. They weren't human, wrong proportions. They showed bipedal gait, intelligent placement, avoiding noisy ground. The prints circled camp, maintaining 30 to 40 foot distance, systematic surveillance. Michael had known he was being watched. His equipment was packed. He'd sat awake all night. At dawn, he'd abandoned camp, left most gear, taken only essentials. Then he'd run again. The trail showed a sprint through a quarter-mile of difficult terrain. I sent our K9 team and 3 rangers to continue following Michael's trail. I stayed with the larger team to process camp, document, photograph, gather evidence. Within an hour, I got a radio call from the K9 team, urgent tone. Coordinator Klein, we've got 2 trails now. Michael's scent and something else. Something else is following Michael's exact route, 50 yards behind him. Whatever it is, it's big and it's bipedal, and it tracked him for miles. I joined the K9 team at their position and saw the evidence myself. 2 parallel trails, Michael's boots and bare footprints behind him. The tracking was precise. This thing had stayed an exact distance behind Michael for 5 miles or more, never got closer, never fell behind, maintained perfect pursuit distance. Michael's trail showed he was aware, kept checking behind, chose difficult terrain trying to lose it. The thing followed anyway, didn't care about obstacles, maintained pursuit effortlessly. Our K9 dogs were becoming agitated, whining, refusing to follow the trail forward. The dogs sensed something ahead that frightened them, prey animals reacting to a predator. The trail led to a steep ravine. Both sets of prints descended. At the bottom we found Michael's backpack, sleeping bag, tent, most of his gear, everything abandoned. Michael had dumped weight to move faster. He only took water, first aid kit, bear spray. He was running for his life. There was blood on rocks, fresh, less than 24 hours old. Michael was injured but still moving, desperate situation. The tracking from the ravine showed Michael's blood trail as he climbed the opposite slope. Difficult ascent, nearly vertical, required rock climbing skills. Michael had pushed through injury to reach the ridge top, impressive feat under normal circumstances. But the other prints followed, same route, same climb. I examined the prints carefully and saw handholds, finger marks in soft earth. The hands were wrong, 6 digits, massive span, strength to grip bare rock. The ridge top showed evidence of a final confrontation. Area of disturbed ground, struggle, fight, evidence of violence. Michael's blood was in multiple locations, significant loss. We found his bear spray canister discharged and empty. He'd used it, but it had no effect on the attacker because the pursuit had continued despite the deterrent. I found Michael's phone, cracked screen but still functional, battery dead. I charged it with a portable battery. The last photos were horrifying. Michael had documented his pursuit, trying to gather evidence. Photos from day 2 showed a distant shape between trees, bipedal, massive, over 8 feet tall. A closer photo from day 3 showed the shape was definitely not bear or human, wrong proportions entirely. The final photo, timestamped 6 hours ago, was taken while running, looking back. Clear image, humanoid covered in dark hair, face almost human but wrong. Heavy brow, massive jaw, eyes showing intelligence and purpose. It was 20 feet behind Michael, reaching for him. The photo captured the actual attack moment. Our team found drag marks from the ridge leading into dense forest. Something had pulled Michael off the ridge into wilderness. The drag trail was 200 yards, then signs of Michael fighting back, broken branches showing struggle. The trail ended at a small clearing. More blood, torn fabric from Michael's clothing, but no body. Michael was gone, dragged away, but where? Our search dogs refused to track further, cowering, whining, absolutely would not proceed into that area. I called for helicopter support, air search, thermal imaging. While waiting, we searched the clearing thoroughly and found more evidence. Bones, human bones, old, partially buried from multiple individuals. Forensic examination later confirmed at least 4 different people, deaths spanning 15 years or more. This clearing was a dump site, a place where this thing brought prey. Michael was the latest victim in a long pattern of predation. I accessed old missing person files from the glacier area after we returned to base. Found a pattern, 23 people missing in the past 30 years, solo hikers never found. All in the same general area, all experienced hikers, all vanished completely. Common elements, last seen in this wilderness sector, no bodies recovered. One survivor from 1998, a hiker who'd been pursued but escaped. Her report described a creature exactly matching Michael's photos. The report was classified as hypothermia-induced hallucination, but she'd insisted something intelligent was hunting in glacier backcountry. The helicopter arrived and began thermal sweep of the area. The thermal imager picked up a heat signature 400 yards from the clearing. Large shape, upright, moving slowly through dense forest. The helicopter descended for a closer look. The shape looked up, made eye contact with the crew. Then it moved with incredible speed into thick forest canopy and disappeared. The crew reported whatever it was knew to hide from the helicopter. Intelligence and awareness beyond any known wildlife. Our ground team regrouped at the clearing, waiting for extraction. I made the decision to abort ground search, too dangerous for the team. We'd return with larger force, better equipment, daylight hours. As the team prepared to hike out, we heard sounds from multiple directions. Branch breaks, rock falls, vocalizations coming from surrounding forest. I realized multiple individuals were present. The team was surrounded. Same tactical situation Michael had faced, pursued, herded, trapped. We moved quickly toward the trail, maintaining group cohesion, weapons ready. The sounds followed, staying parallel, maintaining encirclement but not attacking. After half a mile, the sound stopped suddenly, complete silence. We reached the trail and hiked toward the trailhead without incident. At the trailhead, we found an arrangement of rocks on the trail. The rocks formed a clear message: leave, placed within the last 2 hours while our team was searching the clearing. Something had been at the trailhead, knew we'd return this way, left a warning. I returned with a reinforced team the next day. 25 rangers, sheriff deputies, all armed, fully equipped with rifles, shotguns, bear spray, radio communication, helicopter support. The plan was to recover Michael if possible, document evidence, secure the area. We hiked to the clearing location. All evidence was gone. The bones removed, blood cleaned, drag marks obscured, area sanitized. Whatever was responsible had cleaned up, removed evidence overnight. This was deliberate removal of evidence, counter-surveillance, and intelligence operation. The team spread out, searched wider area, found nothing. Michael's body was gone, taken deeper into wilderness. Helicopter thermal scans showed multiple heat signatures in remote valleys, but the shapes moved into caves under tree canopy when the helicopter approached. They knew the helicopter was looking for them. They avoided detection deliberately. Park Service administrators made the decision to classify Michael as lost in wilderness. Presumed deceased, environmental exposure, remains not recovered. I argued there was evidence of predation, intelligent hunting, a public safety risk. Administration said no definitive proof of anything beyond known wildlife. Michael's photos were called insufficient detail, could be bare, lighting creates illusions. The pattern of disappearances was statistical normal for vast wilderness area. I was ordered to close the search, file the report, move on to other duties. I couldn't accept the official response. I contacted Michael's family privately, showed them photos, evidence, explained what really happened. The family wanted investigation, pushed for answers, threatened media exposure. Park Service response was to offer financial settlement, gag order, close investigation. The family eventually accepted. I was pressured to drop inquiry. Michael's death became another lost hiker statistic. I researched deeper and found a pattern across multiple national parks. Glacier, North Cascades, Olympics, Sierra Nevada, Rockies, similar disappearances. The Can-Am Missing Project documented thousands of cases fitting similar pattern. Experienced hikers vanishing in wilderness, no remains found. Some cases showing evidence of pursuit, intelligent stalking. Official response was always wildlife, exposure, misadventure, not foul play. I spoke with rangers from other parks who had similar experiences. There's an underground network, rangers who'd encountered things, been silenced by administration. We shared information off record, areas to avoid, protocols that weren't official. Knowledge passed ranger to ranger, certain valleys, certain slopes, forbidden areas. places where searches ended, where teams were told not to search, territories controlled by something else, tacitly acknowledged but never officially admitted. I filed official report, Michael Tours, lost in wilderness, presumed deceased. My recommendation for area closure for public safety was denied. The area remained open, thousands of visitors annually, documented trails. I was told to close the case, don't discuss evidence, maintain normal operations. I complied officially, but began documenting the pattern privately. Federal authorities never investigated. No evidence of crime, no body. Local sheriff investigation was cursory, accepted Park Service conclusions. Medical examiner filed death certificate, presumed dead, environmental exposure. Insurance companies paid life insurance to family, accepted official determination. The only documentation of truth was Michael's phone photos, which I copied before returning the phone to family. My relationship with Park Service administration deteriorated. I was transferred to different park, different state, effectively demoted. Officially reorganization, unofficially punishment for pushing investigation. I lost SAR coordinator position, assigned to visitor services, desk work. PTSD from Michael's case gave me nightmares. I couldn't lead backcountry searches anymore. Eventually I resigned, took a job with private SAR organization, left Park Service entirely. I compiled a database, over 300 similar disappearances across Western parks. Cases spanning 50 years, solo hikers, experienced outdoors people, no remains found. Cluster areas showed specific wilderness zones with unusual numbers of disappearances. The correlation with Native American forbidden areas was striking. Traditional boundaries matched disappearance zones exactly. The modern park system had mapped and opened areas that indigenous people had avoided for centuries. I interviewed tribal elders near Glacier, and they knew about the beings. Traditional knowledge said certain areas belonged to forest people, ancient inhabitants. The elders told me warnings were given when parks were established, but boundaries were ignored. They said your people wanted all the land open, wanted tourists everywhere. We told you some places were forbidden, you called it superstition. Now your people disappear and you pretend not to know why. The Glacier area where Michael disappeared is still open to public, no special warnings. Rangers are given unofficial guidance, discourage solo hiking in that sector, suggest alternate trails, redirect visitors to different areas, don't explain why. My evidence is stored privately, not part of official record. I maintain contact with other rangers who have had similar experiences. A network of people who know the truth but are unable to speak officially. 3 years after Michael's disappearance, I received a package postmarked from Montana, no return address. Inside were Michael's driver's license, his wedding ring, and an SD card. The license and ring were items Michael wore and carried, taken from his body. The SD card contained additional photos taken after Michael's phone died. Final images showed Michael injured, exhausted, being pursued through forest. The last photo showed Michael looking at the camera with someone else taking the picture. His expression showed he knew he was going to die, documenting for whoever found it. The final image showed a dark shape approaching, massive, intelligent, purposeful. I turned the evidence over to FBI. Never heard back, investigation never opened. I know Michael's remains are still out there in territory controlled by something else. Something that's been there since before parks existed, before humans claimed wilderness. Something that tolerates tourist trails, casual hikers, visitors who stay on paths. But solo backpackers, people who go deep into wilderness, they enter territories at their own risk. Areas exist in American wilderness that aren't truly under human control. Park rangers know it, indigenous people have always known it, but official policy says wilderness is safe, managed, documented, controlled. The reality is humans are guests in wilderness, and sometimes the true residents object. Michael Tours learned that objection was permanent, absolute, and officially non-existent. This happened in August 2023. I'm Tom Hendricks. I was 31, wilderness ranger for 8 years. I'd specifically requested fire lookout duty that summer. Most rangers hated it, said a week alone in a tower was boring and isolating. I loved it. Total solitude at 11,000 feet, spectacular views, peaceful days watching for smoke. The tower was in San Isabel National Forest, Colorado Rockies, accessed by an 8-mile hike from the nearest road. The previous ranger, Jennifer Walsh, had quit mid-season. Administration said personal issues, didn't want to elaborate. I figured family emergency, burnout, something normal. I hiked in excited, saw the tower from a mile away, beautiful metal structure on an exposed ridge, cabin on top with windows all around. Perfect spot for a week of quiet, reading, watching weather roll through mountains. I had no idea Jennifer hadn't quit because of personal issues. She'd quit because something visited the tower every night, something that climbed the 40-foot tower to look in her windows, something she couldn't identify but that had studied her with intelligence and patience. And whatever had driven Jennifer away was still there, waiting to see what the new ranger would do. I arrived mid-afternoon day one, climbed up, inspected the cabin. Everything was normal, clean, organized, supplies stocked, equipment functional, but I found a notebook. Jennifer's fire log had personal notes in margins. Early entries were normal, weather observations, wildlife sightings, routine notes. Later entries showed stress, something outside last night, heard movement on tower. The final entry 3 days before she quit, it looked AT-me, requesting extraction tomorrow. I settled in, completed first day routine, radio check, weather log, fire scan, beautiful sunset, cooked dinner read by lantern light. Around 10 p.m. I heard something on the tower structure below the cabin. Metal creaking, distinctive sound of weight on the ladder. I looked out, nothing visible, moonlight showed empty tower structure. I assumed wind or thermal expansion of metal, returned to reading. At 11 p.m. I heard it again, louder, clear sound of something ascending the tower. I grabbed my flashlight and shined down, saw nothing on the ladder below, but I heard movement on the opposite side of the tower, something had circled around. I went to the other window and caught a glimpse of a shape ducking below the platform. Large, moving deliberately, hiding when I looked. Something was on the tower structure, avoiding direct observation. I called out asking who was there, no response, but the movement stopped immediately when I spoke. Complete silence for 5 minutes while I watched from windows. Then the movement resumed, deliberate metal creaking, testing the structure. Whatever it was new, I was watching and adjusted behavior accordingly. The intelligence implied human climber maybe, but no human should be on a remote tower at night. I tried the radio to report the situation. Heavy static, couldn't establish clear contact. Radio had worked fine during the day, suddenly degraded at night. Backup radio had the same problem, only getting fragments through static. I grabbed my emergency satellite beacon. The send light blinked, but no confirmation. All communications failing, pattern matching Jennifer's notes. The temperature in the cabin dropped suddenly, 70 degrees to 50 degrees in minutes. I decided to go outside on the tower platform and investigate directly. Armed with flashlight and bear spray, I opened the cabin door. The platform encircled the cabin, metal grating, railing, 40 feet above ground. I stepped out cautiously and swept the area with my flashlight, nothing visible. But I felt eyes watching, overwhelming sense of being observed. I heard breathing, deep and slow, coming from below the platform. I looked over the railing. A shape clung to the tower structure 20 feet down. Massive form, hard to see details in darkness and shadows. Definitely not human, too large, wrong proportions. As I watched, it began climbing again, ascending toward the platform. I retreated into the cabin, locked the door, heart racing. The shape reached platform level and walked around the perimeter outside the cabin. I watched from windows as it circled completely, examining the cabin from all sides. Upright, bipedal, over 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair or fur. Its face pressed against the window briefly, vaguely human features but wrong, monstrous.
I didn't sleep night
Then it
one,
climbed
sat
back
with
down the
lights on,
tower and
watching
disappeared
windows.
into darkness.
At dawn,
below.
I
I examined the tower from the cabin, no sign of the nocturnal visitor. I used binoculars to scan surrounding terrain, nothing unusual visible. I completed morning routine, weather log, fire scan, tried radio contact. Radio worked fine during day. I reported possible wildlife encounter to base. Base response, probably mountain goat, they're curious, won't hurt you. I didn't mention the visitor was bipedal, intelligent, climbing the tower deliberately. I searched the cabin more thoroughly and found Jennifer's personal journal. She'd hidden it under the mattress, documentation of her experience. Jennifer had encountered the same visitor every single night for 2 weeks. She described escalating behavior, first just sounds, then visible appearances, then face at windows. She'd photographed it. Polaroid pictures showed a massive humanoid figure. Face detail showed intelligent eyes, studying her, learning her patterns. Jennifer's note said it knows my routine, waits until I'm ready for bed, watches me through windows, doesn't threaten but won't leave. I can't sleep, can't focus, administration doesn't believe me. Requesting early end to assignment, can't take another night. I completed day 2 duties, weather scan, fire monitoring, but I was dreading nightfall, knowing the visitor would return. Around 9 p.m. I heard it again, ascending the tower, metal creaking rhythmically. This time I didn't look, tried to ignore it, pretended to read. The sounds circled the cabin as it walked around the platform, testing windows. I heard breathing right outside the window beside me, inches away through glass. I looked up. The face was there, pressed against the window, studying me. Massive face, heavy brow, dark eyes that showed awareness and intelligence. It watched me for 5 minutes while I froze, unable to move or look away. Then it moved to the next window, continued observation from a different angle. The visitor's pattern became clear over the next nights. It arrived between 9 and 10 p.m. every night, stayed 2 to 3 hours, circled the cabin repeatedly, looked in all windows, watched me constantly. Never threatened, never tried to enter, just observed endlessly. I felt like a specimen, an animal in a zoo being studied. The visitor learned my routine. When I cooked, read, tried to sleep. It adjusted its timing to maximize observation of my activities. Night 4, I tried to photograph the visitor. I set up my camera at the window and waited for the face to appear. When the face pressed against glass, I took a flash photo. The visitor recoiled from the flash and roared loud enough to shake the cabin. It climbed down the tower rapidly, sounds of destruction below. In the morning, I found torn vegetation and broken tree branches around the tower base. The visitor had displayed aggression, a warning against being photographed. But the photo came out, clear image of the face, undeniably real, not bear or known animal. I researched tower history using documents Jennifer left. The tower had been staffed for over 40 years, dozens of rangers. There was a pattern of rangers leaving early, at least 12 over past decades. All cited personal reasons, none explained specifics. Forest Service records noted tower has high turnover, difficult assignment. Local hiking forums mentioned weird vibes at that tower, wouldn't stay there. Native American tribal territory records showed the area was traditionally avoided, considered haunted. Elders said the mountain belonged to old ones, humans should stay away. Night 5, the visitor's behavior escalated. It arrived earlier, 8 p.m. while still twilight. I watched it approach the tower from the tree line 100 yards away. It walked upright deliberately, looking directly at the cabin as it approached. It climbed the tower slowly, maintaining eye contact with me through the windows. It reached the platform and stood outside the window where I sat. It placed its hand against the glass. Massive palm, long fingers, dark leathery skin. I placed my hand on the glass opposite. The size comparison was shocking. The visitor's hand was 3 times the span of mine. We stayed like that for a minute, me and this creature, glass between us. Then the visitor gestured. It pointed at me, then at the trail away from the tower. The gesture was clear: leave, get out, go away. The message was unmistakable. I was not welcome and needed to leave. Night 6, I heard multiple individuals. The primary visitor arrived as usual, but it brought others. Sounds came from multiple positions around the tower, 3 to 4 different sources. They vocalized to each other, deep calls, communicating, coordinating. I was surrounded by a group, all observing, discussing me. I realized they were deciding what to do about me, whether to tolerate continued presence or force me out. I was outnumbered, isolated, completely at their mercy. Morning day 7, I found an arrangement outside the tower. Rocks and branches formed a clear message on the ground, an arrow pointing toward the trail. Human-like intelligence, symbol-making, communication. The message reinforced the gesture from the previous night: leave. My supplies had been thrown down from the tower storage area during the night. They'd accessed the storage compartment, scattered my food, destroyed the organization, making my stay uncomfortable, pressuring me to quit like Jennifer. But I had one more night of scheduled assignment. I debated finish the assignment out of professional pride or extract early for survival. I decided to complete the full week, prove I could handle what Jennifer couldn't. Night 7, the final night, the visitors arrived in force. I counted sounds from at least 6 individuals surrounding the tower. All climbed the tower simultaneously and surrounded the cabin on the platform, standing outside all windows, looking in from every direction. I was in the center of the cabin, surrounded, observed from all sides. No escape, no help available. The radio still didn't work at night. The visitors began testing the cabin structure, pushing on walls, shaking the tower framework, rocking the entire structure. Metal groaned, the cabin swayed. I feared collapse. They were demonstrating power, showing they could bring the tower down if they wanted. I grabbed bear spray, prepared to defend if they breached the cabin. But they didn't try to enter. They just demonstrated capability and sent a message. After an hour of demonstration, the visitors stopped. All climbed down simultaneously and stood in a circle around the tower base. I watched from above, 6 massive shapes, human-like but wrong. They looked up at me, multiple faces watching, coordinated observation. Then they vocalized together, synchronized roar, deafening. The tower shook from the sound, windows rattled, the warning was clear. Then they turned and walked away, disappeared into the tree line as a group. I radioed base at dawn requesting early extraction, emergency. Base response, you've got 6 hours until scheduled pickup, finish your shift. I said I need it out now, safety issue, hostile wildlife. Base said morning helicopter not available, afternoon pickup is scheduled. I was stuck for 8 more hours in the tower, knowing they'd return that night. I debated hiking out 8 miles, but the visitors controlled surrounding terrain. Safer to wait in the tower, steel structure, enclosed cabin, radio if needed. I spent the final day packing, preparing to leave. I reflected on the week. The visitors had never actually threatened violence, just observed, pressured, sent clear message, not welcome. They tolerated the tower presence but limited. 1 week was their patience. Rangers rotating through weekly was acceptable to them. A ranger staying permanently was not. Jennifer had pushed that boundary. I understood the area wasn't really managed by Forest Service. True control belonged to beings who lived there permanently. The tower existed by their permission and could be removed if they chose. Afternoon pickup approached, helicopter scheduled for 3 p.m. I waited on the platform, gear packed, ready to leave. At 2:30 p.m. I saw them emerging from the tree line. All 6 individuals walking toward the tower, deliberately not hiding. They surrounded the tower base, looked up at me and waited. They were ensuring I was leaving, watching the extraction. The helicopter arrived at 3 p.m. The pilot radioed asking what the hell are those. I said local wildlife, nothing to worry about, let's go. As the helicopter lifted off, the visitors watched, standing in a circle around the tower. The message was clear, I was allowed to leave, but the tower was on their territory by their permission, and the next ranger would face the same observation, same pressure. I was debriefed by Forest Service Administration. I reported large wildlife, possible undocumented species, intelligent behavior. I showed the photo of the face at the window. Administration dismissed it as obviously a bear. Lighting creates illusions, not evidence of anything unusual. My request for investigation was denied. The area would continue normal operations. I was told to finish the season at a different assignment. The tower would be restaffed. The next ranger assigned to the tower lasted 4 days before requesting extraction. Same experiences. The third ranger lasted 2 days, refused to discuss why. Forest Service had a pattern, could not keep rangers at that tower. Eventually the tower was temporarily closed for structural concerns. The real reason was they couldn't staff it, rangers wouldn't stay. The tower remains closed 3 years later, officially for maintenance. I completed fire season at a different tower without incident, but I couldn't shake the experience. PTSD from the week of observation. The feeling of being watched persisted, paranoia, hypervigilance. Eventually I left Forest Service, couldn't work remote areas anymore. Fear that things from the tower might be at other locations too. My career in wilderness management ended. I work urban forestry now. I researched after leaving Forest Service and found a pattern across Rocky Mountain fire lookout towers. Multiple towers with similar histories, high turnover, early ranger departures, common elements, remote locations, night visitors, ranger testimonials ignored, several towers permanently closed. Official reasons vary, real reason is the same. Beings that inhabit deep wilderness don't want permanent observation. They tolerate brief human presence but reject sustained surveillance. I spoke with retired rangers who'd worked Colorado in the 1970s and 80s. They confirmed some towers were always problems, rangers wouldn't stay. Administration knew but couldn't admit areas weren't under our control. Indigenous people warned us those peaks belonged to old ones. We built towers anyway and learned the lesson after too many rangers quit. Some territories humans are allowed to visit but not allowed to stay. My tower remains officially closed, access trail is maintained. Hikers can reach the tower base, fenced off, warning signs, no entry. Official reason is structural instability, dangerous conditions. The real reason is beings still inhabit the area. They demonstrated this when contractors attempted repairs. The repair crew lasted 1 night in temporary camp and all quit the next morning. Work was abandoned. The tower will never reopen, slowly being reclaimed. 1 year after my tower experience, I received a package, postmarked from Colorado mountain town near the tower. Inside was a Polaroid photo, appears to be taken from inside the tower cabin. The photo showed me sleeping on the cot, taken night 3 or 4 of my assignment. The angle was from the corner of the cabin where I'd never positioned a camera. Someone or something had been inside the cabin while I slept, taking photos, documenting me, studying me when I was most vulnerable. I had thought the locked cabin was safe. I was completely wrong. They could enter when they wanted. They chose not to harm me. The photo was a message. We allowed you to leave. We watched you constantly. You were never safe, never in control, always observed. I destroyed the photo immediately, couldn't handle proof they'd been that close, but the knowledge haunts me. A week in that tower, I was never alone, always watched. Beings that inhabit Rocky Mountain wilderness are real. They tolerate limited human presence in their territory. But permanent occupation, surveillance, monitoring is not acceptable. Fire lookout towers mark boundaries where human control ends. Beyond certain points, wilderness truly is wild, managed by beings that predate human presence, who will be there long after towers crumble, and who will never accept human authority over their ancient domains.